I've struggled with anxiety for pretty much my entire life. To combat uncertainty, I find myself planning out every last detail of everything I do, every activity, every social interaction, every possibility. When something unexpected happens, it can be a struggle to not see it as a world-ending catastrophe, regardless of what actually happened. If I had to describe what anxiety feels like, it feels a lot like Firewatch. Firewatch is a narrative adventure game released in 2016. It follows a man named Henry who takes a job as a fire lookout in Shoshone National Forest as an escape from his life's problems. He has to own up to his mistakes. He has to cope with a personal tragedy. He has to pick up the pieces of his shattered life. It would be so much easier if everyone just left him alone. Firewatch begins with a love story. Through text, we learn of Henry and his wife, Julia, how they met, how they fell in love, got married, and adopted a dog, how a small series of cracks formed in their relationship, how they drifted apart, how Julia got sick. In this prologue, the player can make choices for Henry, but the decisions cannot change what lies ahead for the two of them. No matter what, their relationship will start to deteriorate. No matter what, Julia will start to forget things. Her memory fades. She gets diagnosed with early onset dementia. Henry can take care of her himself, or he can move her into assisted living, but either choice will draw the ire of their friends and family. As the prologue ends, Julia's family takes her to her hometown of Melbourne, Australia, so they can take care of her. Henry will take a job as a fire lookout as the summer rolls around. It's a lonely job, one where he watches for fires and waits for disaster. There he meets his companion for the season, a fellow lookout named Delilah. They communicate over two-way radio, and her disembodied voice is the only form of social interaction Henry has. Well, it would be if this were any other summer in Shoshone. Strange things start happening all around Henry's tower. Things that don't really add up. Whether he likes it or not, Henry is not alone. Firewatch is about getting lost. Delilah is technically Henry's supervisor, so she will give him assignments he needs to complete. At least at a job like this, he has some sort of direction. The game takes place in the partially kempt wilderness, and the player will navigate Henry to a certain point on the map. The way forward isn't always obvious, but at least he has a clearly defined goal.
Are those fireworks?
That's not legal, right?
No. You need to get down there right now and stop them.
As the two of them become more comfortable with each other, they'll tease each other.
There's some guy out here.
Some guy? Henry, there's something someone should have told you about this area.
What is it?
It's outside.
Eventually, they'll open up to one another. This isn't the kind of job someone takes when things are going well.
She's got Alzheimer's, like, dementia.
Whoa. How old was she?
Is she? She's alive. She's with her family in Melbourne, Australia. She's 43.
What was it like when you guys found out?
We went straight to the doctor after her first spell or whatever. They diagnosed her, and we were both just very scared.
Every time Delilah speaks to Henry, the player can pick a handful of responses. These dialogue options compound on one another. There is not one true Henry, only your version of Henry. This extends to actions as well. In an early sequence, Henry is tasked with hiking up to an access point to grab supplies for his tower. When he arrives, he finds 3 boxes for 3 different towers. Delilah tells Henry to only take the box allotted to him, but there's nothing stopping the player from taking all of them. According to Chris Remo, one of the game's primary writers and designers, this was originally telegraphed to the player. The game would stop and present a choice: take what's yours or take everything. But the team realized that it would be more interesting if the player wasn't being asked an explicit question, but they still made a choice. The game has 2 responses from Delilah for either outcome. She's either going to be pleased that you were honest, or will think less of you for being greedy. The game is filled with little decisions that get tracked across a single playthrough. Seemingly minor things are secretly being tallied, which affects how the 2 characters interact. Quote, basically anything the player chooses to do can be tracked by the game. Then, as a result of those things being tracked, different lines of dialogue can play. And that can be anything from a whole conversation, to just changing one line in the middle of a conversation and leaving everything else the same, or anything in between. So we ended up focusing a lot more on what you could sort of call micro-choices happening all the time, as opposed to big, chunky, branching stories. In effect, the relationship between the two characters feels rather malleable, squishy even. It really does feel like Delilah is reacting to the player. In that same interview, Remo mentions that he thinks the team implemented this a bit too well, to the point that many players didn't realize that the game had any choices at all. They thought it was completely linear. Although, in fairness, that is true, depending on your definition of completely linear. The game is not linear, in that the two central characters' relationship can develop differently based on the player's actions. But the game is linear, in that the major plot beats, Julia's illness, the many mysteries that unfold, and its controversial ending cannot change. The game sits in two worlds, one where the player is responsible for everything, and one where the player has no say in anything. As things grow more complicated, this friction between having loads of agency and no agency at all starts to burn. Henry and Delilah find themselves at the center of several, possibly connected, mysteries. Two teens setting off fireworks get told to leave, only to later be reported missing. Henry's tower gets ransacked. Delilah speaks of a past lookout and his son, both of whom disappeared. Soon, Henry and Delilah suspect that they're being watched, only to have that hunch confirmed. This is why Firewatch is such an effective depiction of anxiety, this disconnect between agency and no agency, the raised questions that only lead to more questions. Everything in the game builds on the characters and the players' uncertainty. Uncertainty and anxiety are intrinsically linked. Researchers Dan W. Group and Jack B. Nitschke developed the uncertainty and anticipation model of anxiety, which helps explain how these sensations create something of a feedback loop. Quote, "The human brain," it has been written, "is an anticipation machine, and making future is the most important thing it does. The ability to use past experiences and information about our current state and environment to predict the future allows us to increase the odds of desired outcomes, while avoiding or bracing ourselves for future adversity. Uncertainty diminishes how efficiently and effectively we can prepare for the future, and thus contributes to anxiety. The model places increased threat expectancies at the center. This is the heart of the issue. An individual with anxiety anticipates danger more than the average person. Both Henry and Delilah process their surroundings in a way that builds anxiety. Take the girls setting off fireworks. By themselves, they are simply two people on a rock in a lake. They are not inherently dangerous, just two teens who drank too much, went swimming, and scored a deal at a fireworks tent. Obnoxious? Sure. But dangerous? Not especially. Well, as long as they don't burn the forest down. Surrounding the increased threat expectancies are 5 nodes that play off each other, each with accurate but not so catchy names. Disrupted expected value calculation refers to the perceived probability or severity of something bad happening. Whenever engaging in something potentially risky, an individual will assess how frequently danger will occur and how serious that danger will be. When Henry confronts the two teens, he seems almost scared of them, and it's like, what are they gonna do? Shoot a firework at them? There isn't much danger present. Increased threat attention and hypervigilance refers to an individual interpreting neutral or ambiguous stimuli as a threat. If a statement or scenario can be interpreted in multiple ways, someone with anxiety would have a tendency to always assume the worst possible outcome. After the incident at the lake, Henry discovers that a communication line has been damaged. Are these two incidents connected in any way? Probably. Deficient safety learning refers to environmental cues. Someone with anxiety would have trouble determining if a space is safe or not. Even if a space is safe, every little thing will be scrutinized, poking holes in its perceived safety. As Henry walks through the woods, he will find the girls' former campsite. There is no one around. It's as safe as any other place in the woods, but it certainly doesn't feel that way. Behavioral and cognitive avoidance refers to shying away from scenarios where perceived threats can occur. If a person never goes to a place where they think something bad will happen, that bad thing will never happen. They avoided the threat. Uncertainty is put at bay. After the incident with the teens, Henry and Delilah decide to not report what happened to their supervisors. In their minds, it's best to just let these things be, to not prolong the proceedings. They're avoiding dealing with the situation at hand. They avoid uncertainty. And finally, heightened reactivity to threat uncertainty refers to attitudes towards uncertainty itself. Since predicting the future always has some sliver of uncertainty, it can't be avoided entirely. Uncertainty itself, even without negative outcomes, can add to one's anxiety. When Delilah learns of the two missing girls, there are plenty of unknowns. Were they the ones that trashed Henry's watchtower? Who did the things they mentioned in the note they left behind? The fact that there is no clear ending to their story builds anxiety in both characters. The uncertainty and anticipation model of anxiety draws connections to these 5 psychological processes and how they relate to perceived threats. Not being able to read safety cues leads to avoidance, which increases threat expectancies, which creates a loop with hypervigilance. And notice that this model does not have an outlet. There is nowhere for this energy to go. It continues to loop and loop, adding to one's anxiety. Outside of the prologue, the entire game takes place around the Two Forks Lookout Tower. Due to the nature of the job, Henry cannot leave his post. He took the job to be alone, and he got what he wanted. Though he is now alone with his thoughts. His anxious mind has no social outlet. Delilah, while someone to talk to, only exists to Henry as a disembodied voice. She is also cooped up in her tower, with only disembodied voices to keep her company. During the beginning of summer, Henry and Delilah joke around, exaggerating the severity of their circumstances.
That is how you get to my sector. Well, it's locked up and mainly for emergencies.
Help! Oh God, it's an emergency!
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got eyes on a tornado. I gotta get out of here.
A tornado in the heart of the Rockies?
Yes.
Holy moly, I need to call this in. Tom, Two Forks sees a tornado. He says he needs an evac into my sector. It's a meteorological impossibility. There haven't been tornadoes in the greater Yellowstone region in 100 million years. You're gonna need him to stay and take a detailed personal account, even if it means giving his life. Okay, I'll tell him. Sorry, Hank. No dice.
But when strange things happen around the park, nervous energy starts to build and build and build. As the mysteries mount, that anxiety has nowhere to turn but inwards. Partway through the story, Henry and Delilah suspect they're being followed. Their conversations are being recorded. Their whereabouts are being tracked. Who is doing this? Why? What do they want? Why are they being targeted? Henry finds a fenced-off area. Delilah doesn't see it on the map. Wait, is this a research facility? What's this doing here? Towards the end of the story, they're not kidding.
Henry, I've been at this job off and on for 13 years, and nothing like this has ever happened before.
Am I just making all of this up? I mean, the eavesdropping, the spying, is any of this real?
What? Are you serious?
Maybe I'm just losing my mind.
What?
Like Julia. Maybe it's happening to me, and I'm imagining that I have a boss out here and that we're being spied on.
Every little thing that happens leads to more questions, more uncertainty. And that uncertainty enters the feedback loop, enhancing the anxiety of the two characters. Before long, their threat expectancies have ballooned. What can anyone do in a situation like this? Everything feels jittery, like the story itself is on the verge of a breakdown. This retreat, this job where they're meant to sit alone, has become fuel for a waking nightmare. Firewatch does answer these questions by the time it concludes, and its ending might be the most famous or infamous thing about it. But before we talk about that, I need to take a detour. Last year, the awesome members of the I Am a Dot Patreon, which I do recommend joining, by the way, nominated and voted on horror games for me to make videos about. One of the finalists was the Fears to Fathom anthology, which consists of 5 small, grounded tales. The 4th story is titled Ironbark Lookout. It follows a man who takes a job as a fire lookout to escape some personal troubles. He lives in his tower and performs a series of mundane tasks, only for strange things to start happening all around him. He will venture into a trashed campsite. He will be out in the woods alone after dark. Someone may be watching him from afar, surveilling his every move. Since Ironbark Lookout sits in the horror genre, the overtly creepy atmosphere raises the audience's guard. The oppressive darkness, the occasional jump scare, the way everything feels slightly off. The sentence, "I had a habit of peeing before eating," disturbs me more than it probably should. But then we get to the big reveal of what is actually going on. The source of all the strange happenings is a cult performing rituals in the woods. When the cult realizes they've been spotted, They chase our character with intent to kill. Ironbark Lookout was released several years after Firewatch, and while this is just speculation on my part, it feels like a response to the way Firewatch ended. The missing girls weren't mauled by a bear or abducted or murdered. They were arrested a few towns over. They're alive. Case closed. The strange research station, the one that's keeping tabs on everything that's going on, yeah, it's just collecting soil samples. It's like actual research. Well, what about the former lookout who disappeared? Well, we learn what happened to him and his son, and it's tragic. All of the things Henry and Delilah were worried about have simple, logical explanations. Henry and Delilah speak of meeting face to face. Maybe they could become lifelong friends. Maybe they could become a couple after the summer comes to a close. But they never do. They spend the entire story worried about the uncertain future, regretting mistakes in their past, only for it all to just be kind of mundane. I've seen Firewatch's ending be described as unsatisfying, and while I don't necessarily agree with that opinion, I do understand it. For the conclusion to be so literal, so understated, it can feel anticlimactic. If there isn't a murderous cult in the woods, then what do we get all worked up for? Even though that's an objectively worse outcome, it's an easier explanation. It's easier than admitting that the problem may be coming from within. Firewatch is about being lost, but at least in the physical space there is a literal destination. The story is equally, if not more so, about being lost temporally. Not in a science fiction sense, but in an emotional one. Henry and Delilah are unmoored, unsure of what to do. Both characters are haunted by their pasts. Henry wishes he could turn back the clock to when things were simpler and happier. Delilah wishes she could undo the many mistakes she's made. Her inaction in the past indirectly led to tragedy. Does that make her responsible? Meanwhile, they brace for an uncertain future. They worry about the surveillance, the missing campers, the mysterious figures, the strange things happening and what they all mean. They long to meet in person, to make each other's disembodied voice real. If only we could confirm that Delilah is a real person after all, and not just a voice on a walkie-talkie. Though I think deep down they know it will never happen. The future is hopeful, terrifying, and depressing at the same time. But so little of Firewatch is spent on the present moment. The woods around the Two Forks Lookout are beautiful, calm, peaceful. The summer sun illuminates the vibrant colors. Henry climbs mountains and hikes through valleys and wades through rivers. The present moment is breathtaking. But the present moment is also dangerous. A stray fire starts in the distance. Henry isn't a ranger, nor is he a firefighter. All he can do is watch. The fire spreads, a second one starts, and there's nothing he can do about it. At least if there's a great conspiracy, if there's a mystery to solve, there would be some way he could help. But in the present moment, he is helpless, and that's terrifying. The fire consumes the park and its inhabitants evacuate. Even as the fire burns all around him, he feels compelled to solve the mystery of the former lookout. He finds the little alcove where the lookout had been hiding. Henry pieces together the past and envisions the future, while the fire actively consumes the woods around him. He goes to the evacuation point near Delilah's now vacant tower. Over the radio, he speaks to her one final time. They will never actually meet. When the helicopter gets here, he needs to get on and escape from the place that was supposed to be an escape. As someone who spends an awful lot of time writing about games, I only recently had a breakthrough as to why it's the medium that speaks to me the most. I get overwhelmed rather easily. When I discovered the uncertainty and anticipation model of anxiety, I was like, yep, that's how my brain works. But with a game, I'm in control of something. I assume the role of at least one character and exist within the strict boundaries a development team put in place. I can focus on the task at hand and not worry about life-shattering long-term consequences. Nothing in a game will happen if it wasn't designed to happen. There are no unknowns. I don't have to worry about a sudden illness, or losing my job, or being the victim of a crime if I'm James Bond. There might be difficulties or consequences, but they all exist within the confines of the game. I might not know what will happen next, but there will be no unknowns. In that sense, games provide this feeling of comfort that I don't really get anywhere else. that feeling of being in control, but also not in control at all. Which is why Firewatch is such a curious case. It too is self-contained, taking its players on several hikes around this small stretch of forest. Henry and Delilah believe that they are being watched and listened to. And they are, but nothing ultimately comes of it. The story will conclude the same way no matter what. The player has loads of control, and none. In actuality, the player is being watched and listened to. Like with the prologue and the supply box decision, the game gives the player choice after choice after choice, molding the story in a way that reflects their own personality, only for it not to matter. The way that Henry and Delilah's relationship unfolds over the course of the summer can't change that the forest is on fire. Firewatch's prologue shows the game's whole hand. Despite everything the player does, they can't stop the inevitable. No matter which dog they adopt, Julia will still develop dementia. No matter how Henry and Delilah's partnership plays out, they will part ways without ever meeting. There are things outside of your control that you will have to deal with on your own. The player is helpless. For the entirety of Firewatch, Henry is alone. We see a figure on the rocks, we see the girls at the lake, we hear Delilah over the radio. Julia is but a collection of memories. We never physically interact with anyone. Every relationship is obscured by distance. Henry left his troubles behind, only to learn that he wasn't alone. This self-imposed solitude shattered as he and Delilah uncovered the mysteries of Two Forks Lookout. That feeling of thinking you're alone, only to realize that you're not actually, is terrifying. Just thinking about it creeps me out. But as the forest burns to a crisp, Henry learns that he is actually alone. Meeting Delilah was such a fantasy, but it was never going to happen. During their final conversation, it becomes clear. Henry never wanted to be alone. He wanted a change, an escape, some solitude, but he didn't want to be alone. Outside of the forest, there are so many uncertainties, so many unknowns, the very real possibility that Henry will be alone again, lost in a world without his wife, without his friends, and without Delilah, whoever she is to him. In the final moments of the story, the rescue helicopter appears. And it is here, at the very end, we see something we have never seen before. A fully modeled human. A real person. We grab their hand towards an uncertain future where we may be alone. But for a brief moment, we're not.